Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a book that I really didn't want to make a video about just because I didn't like it, but I feel like it's one of those books where depending on where you're at in your life, depending on your age, depending on your mental health at the time, because this is a book that talks about mental health, this book could be good or bad for you. And I did not feel like this book was right for me in any way, but I can see where people may have a totally different feeling about it than I did. So this is just my opinion. If you love this book, if you love this author, this is not about taking apart this book or the author. I know that this is a popular person, and if you had a reaction like mine, I want you to know that you're not alone. Like, this book is difficult, and I kind of hate that I have to say that because this is like a teenage fiction. But anything that involves mental health, you really have to be careful with, and I feel like you can really generalize or you can really affect people, and it can be very triggering to read about someone's, kind of mental issues, especially if you have dealt with them yourself. So I'm talking about Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. I'm going to give a really brief overview, and then I will get into spoilers and why this didn't work for me. So this book is about a girl named Aza, and I hope that's how you say it. It's A-Z-A. And she suffers from anxiety and obsessive compulsive disorder. So she has OCD, and she has a very strong anxiety. Her best friend Daisy is one of the main characters, and then a boy named Davis, and Michael is kind of a side character. So this book starts out with the disappearance of Davis's father, who is a billionaire. And I know what you're thinking, what does this have to do with mental health? I'll get to it. This book for me, I didn't get it, but Davis's father, he's a billionaire, he disappears one night, and the feds are looking for him because they believe that he had done some shady business deals. So Daisy and Aza are kind of talking about it in the lunchroom, and Daisy is like, hey, there's a reward for info. We should try and get this reward. You knew Davis back in, when you were younger, and, you have an in. We can go try and get some info from him and get this reward for getting information on his dad. And that's kind of where the story goes. It's following Aza and Daisy as they go and try and get information from Davis about what happened, where his dad might be. There's a mystery involved. So that is a very brief overview of the book. I will say, if you struggle with anxiety, this book could be very triggering, as it goes in depth to Aza's thought spirals, as she's pretty much described in the book, where she has a thought and keeps thinking it over and over and over, and she cannot stop. She has to do whatever that thought is, like, oh, she has to check something, or she has to fix something, or she didn't do something, now she has to go do it. If you struggle with that kind of thinking, I would say be cautious with this book. I am not someone who believes in, censoring or not, reading books. Like, I'm not saying don't read it. I'm just saying be aware, because I have anxiety at times, and this book did make me anxious. I mean, you're basically reading someone having a whole anxiety episode, and I didn't enjoy it. It didn't put me in a good frame of mind. But I will say, if you enjoy this author, maybe you would like the book. I just, as a 34-year-old now, I will say this book just didn't really speak to me. And I didn't feel like its treatment of mental health was serious enough as an adult. Like, I would not want my child struggling with, if my child struggled with anxiety, I wouldn't hand them this book and be like, oh, here's a really great book about this. So I'm going to get into spoilers. Like, those are just my overview. Like, this is totally my opinion, but I must talk spoilers now. So this book is basically kind of a little bit mental health, a little bit mystery disappearance, a little bit first love story, and tackling the idea of how people deal with people who are, have some issues like this, like OCD and anxiety. I will say, This book falls into this category of what I would say is more of a modern idea, where all of the characters are flawed. I would say Davis is probably the most likable, but most of the main characters have issues. And I think that the idea that if you don't have a lot of flawed characters, it's not realistic is kind of a bummer to me, because I don't like these characters. I get that they're teens, so like this is not against teenagers, but there's going to be some issues because teenagers can be difficult. That age is just really hard, I remember. But I do think that it made it really hard to like them. I didn't like Daisy, the best friend. I thought she was awful. She was god awful. I couldn't believe that she was the best friend. She's terrible to Aza. She talks to her terribly. She treats her mental illness as if it's her fault, as if she's that she uses it as like, oh, well, you don't know enough about me and my life and my struggles because you're so stuck in your own head, and Aza can't control that. And that makes her feel like a terrible friend. Daisy also writes, because this book also, besides all the other things, has to throw in a bunch of relevant pop culture references, so he's up on that stuff. So Daisy writes Star Wars fan fiction where Rey and Chewbacca are a couple. Wow. And she incorporates, Aza incorporates Daisy into these stories, and Aza reads them, and she sees that she's been written as this horrible character that ruins everything, that everything she touches, basically gets wrecked, and she brings all the, she comes to the party and it's, immediately a big downer because she's there. And this is her best friend saying this about her. And I really didn't like that, because I felt that it really portrayed Daisy's arguments and things as being very valid, when, yeah, it might be really hard for her, but the way that she took it out on Aza was very, very detrimental. And if the people who support me, if I, when I'm going through anxiety, when I've had issues, if they said these things to me, it would wreck me. If you said this, as someone who's in a bad frame of mind already, if you're going to tell them like, yeah, it's really hard dealing with you all the time, and it's really difficult for me, like having to put up with you and all your issues, like you could push someone either to completely shut down or to something else that could be really bad. I'm not saying like she's going to make her suicidal. I'm just saying this was to me, a detrimental relationship. I didn't like their friendship. Daisy's not a nice person. She's extremely selfish. She only cares about the reward money. She immediately has to tell Aza how, you don't understand because you think you're poor, but I'm really poor. Because what this teenage drama needed was a little class warfare in there. Like, oh, make sure that you tell her that she doesn't understand real poverty. You're really poor and you have to work at Chuck E. Cheese. So, make her feel bad. I hated it. I did not like their friendship at all. I thought it was ridiculous, and how it was kind of put up on this pedestal of like, oh, they're besties. I'm like, no, stay away from each other. Like, Daisy's not a good person, and Aza doesn't need that negativity when she's seeing a therapist all the time and still not even fully taking her meds. Like, this girl needs help. So that was my thought on that whole aspect of their relationship. The first love, Davis, I don't have a lot to say there. It was, kind of meh. I didn't really feel like there's a lot of chemistry, but really there can't be, because she probably shouldn't have been in a relationship. She freaks out when they kiss the first time because bacteria and microbes freak her out. So, kissing somebody, like you're passing stuff back and forth, sounds really gross, but it is. And she can't handle it, freaks out. So I feel like, it's basically was just showing that she wasn't ready, and, that made sense. Aza's mental health issues are not really dealt with. This is not going to be a story that wraps up with Aza getting better. I understand that that's not really how it would work in real life. Like I said, I've had issues with anxiety, I've had panic attacks, etc. I don't feel like this is something where you're going to be necessarily cured, but I feel like there's a kind of hopelessness at the end of the book where it basically says, like, she's going to grow up, she's going to have kids, she'll be in and out of the hospital, like, her life is going to be what it is. And like I said, I wouldn't give this to a teen struggling with these issues because there's not really a lot of hope offered basically it's like, well, you'll probably always deal with it. And there are plenty of ways to better cope with these issues. You can talk to, a therapist, there's medication, there's so many different things and coping mechanisms that you can use. You don't have to feel like you're, a mess or you're always going to be messed up. I don't feel that way. Like, that is a problem if you're feeling like you're never going to have a good day or be well or not, struggle with falling into these thought spirals. I just didn't feel like it was something that you should say to people who are already probably struggling. So I wouldn't recommend this if you are. Because I'm an adult and I was like, oh, that's the end? This is how this ends? Like, I mean, basically Aza ends up, having a big meltdown. At one point she's chugging like hand sanitizer to clean out her body. Like, this is not good. This girl's going through stuff. And she thinks that will cleanse her. And these issues are not treated with the severity that they should have been. Like, she could have killed herself. She could have died of alcohol poisoning. That stuff is basically just straight alcohol. And, she ends up, her mom basically gives her a pill every day. And it's like, it just didn't feel like this author really wanted to get in depth with what this, should have looked like or what it could have been to be better or actual real, things that could have helped her. It just was like, I'm not saying he used it to, like, I mean, I did feel like it was kind of just a plot device. I'm sorry. It just felt like the book was like, oh, well, I wrote in a book, like, about this kind of thing with a mystery. And, I mean, I know some of John Green's works. I'm not, like, down on it, but I'm just saying I feel like he likes these kind of mysterious, like, person disappears, gotta find person, what's going on, interpersonal relationships. But this one's like, oh, no, but this one's about mental health. And I'm like, I don't like that. I don't like that you just kind of threw it in there without taking the time to take it seriously. Because I didn't feel like it was. And that's totally my thought. Like, I would have liked to have seen real consequences from Aza's behavior, especially when, she's shoveling Purell into her mouth. Like, that's a bad idea. And the only reason that she ends up in the hospital and ends up being seen and these issues get dealt with is because she gets in a car accident. She doesn't tell her therapist. And the other issue that I had was the medication. Her mother ends up forcing her to take it every day. But this idea that you it's wrong that you would need a pill to be better, to be yourself, is very detrimental. Like, some people need medication. And Aza there's not a strong enough, like, no, Aza, that is not right. Like, you're thinking that you shouldn't have to take a pill to be better is extremely detrimental to you. Like, you probably need medication to not be drinking hand sanitizer. I've not had to take medication to manage my anxiety, and I'm glad I don't have to right now. But I would never feel ashamed if I did. I would never tell someone not to. I would never tell them that's gonna, that they shouldn't. If you need that, do not feel bad. Like, do not. That was one thing I felt was, I didn't think that it was addressed strongly enough. Like, there should have been a whole moment where she realized, of course I can take a pill and it's not going to change me or alter me. Some people have issues where they need to take medicine, and that is not wrong. That was hard for me as, like, reading this. I just didn't feel like there was things that were so not, okay, how do I say this? There were things that just didn't get addressed in a way that I thought was beneficial to the topic. Like, this is not, I don't feel like helping in any way. The one way I could see, like, if people really connected with Aza, if you really feel like her story was told well, then I think that you might like this book if you really connected with her character. I don't have OCD. Like I said, I recognize the thought spiral. And for me, it's, I had times where it was worse, before and after having my kids, where I would, oh, I have to go check on them. I have to go check on them. I have to go check on them. I feel better if I check on them. I have to go check on them right now. Like, I get that. But I don't think that this book helped me because I already was aware of these issues that I have. I actually think it made it worse because I noticed that after I read this book, I had a bit more of an anxious feeling about me because I was constantly reading about somebody who's having episodes. So, yeah, this is totally just my thoughts on this book. I wanted to like it because I know this is a popular author, and I totally would read a different book. I felt like his writing style was fine and enjoyable. Nothing against the writing. I just didn't like these characters. I didn't like that. It really felt like Aza's mental health was just another little plot device. Like, we've got the missing billionaire, we've got, you know, the relationship between her and Davis, and we'll throw this in to make it a little more interesting. I'm not trying to be mean about this. I am sure he had the best of intentions. I don't think people write things like this to hurt people. Like, I don't think that that's it at all. I think it just, for me as an adult reading it, I was like, oh, I would not give this to somebody struggling. Like, I wouldn't hand this to a 16-year-old and be like, oh, you should read this book. It talks about somebody with, you know, these issues. Yeah, so tell me your thoughts. If this book really helped you, if you really connected with these characters, if you thought it was great, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I will say, along the lines of the writing, I did not think the dialogue was in any way realistic to teenagers. I've been around teenagers. I know teenagers. I know plenty of teenagers, and that's not how they talk. So, you know, I accept that in fantasy novels when teenagers don't talk like teenagers because it's fantasy, but when it's contemporary, I'm like, no, that's not how teenagers talk, but okay. And it always comes off sounding like how adults imagine teenagers talk. So, just my thoughts. Please like and subscribe, and definitely talk to me in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts on this book and how you feel about the treatment of these issues in novels and books. If you have a book that you really like, I will say I would recommend for anybody An Unquiet Mind, I believe it's called. I'll put it here. This is about a woman who has, I believe, bipolar disorder, and it's really good. I've also read I Never Promised You a Rose Garden. These are books that I felt like I really enjoyed reading and were better, like they dealt more in depth with some mental health struggles that these people had, and I liked these books. So tell me your favorite book that deals with this topic. And yeah, thank you so much if you've made this far, and I hope to talk to you soon.